This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Sudan forces fire tear gas to disperse protesters as internet is cut in Khartoum. Mali denies deployment of Russian mercenaries and says only trainers are present. And a tough Christmas for many in the Philippines as people struggle to rebuild after last week's Typhoon Rai. Hello and welcome to you. This is Africa Live on CGTN. Merry Christmas to you wherever you're joining us. I'm Mahia Mutua in Nairobi. Also coming up, Kenya to start giving COVID-19 booster shots. And Nigerians join Christmas celebrations while observing safety protocols. Thousands of Sudanese protesters marched in the nation's capital, Khartoum, on Saturday. This marks another round of demonstrations rejecting military rule. Protests continued even as authorities tightened security there. Troops were deployed to close bridges connecting Khartoum to the suburbs. Reports of interrupted communications through restricted internet and cut phone lines surfaced ahead of the planned demonstrations. Sudanese convened at the presidential palace in Khartoum. It is currently serving as the headquarters of the military government. The military seized power in late October, and that move brought to an end transition partnerships. Activists say more protests are planned for December the 30th. Well, let's get more insight into that story. We're now joined by CGTN's Musab Mohsin Ibrahim in Sudan's capital, Khartoum, for the latest. Musab, thank you for joining us. What is the latest on the ongoing protests in Sudan?
Yes, as we know, the situation now, all the Sudanese people, they went and asking for democracy and the rights, and they fighting before a couple of weeks ago, and every 2 or 3 days, they went in the street and asking for the rights and democracy. The protest today was very big today. All people from many different places, in all the Khartoum, from the four direction, they gathered together. There was rejecting what's happened in the 25th October, and they also reject what's happened in 20 Paris when the Prime Minister signed with the General Commander Al-Burhan. All of them, they rejected it. Today, there was no internet connection. They cut the internet connection and the telecommunications. No connecting. All we can receive call from outside Sudan. And this was from the morning until right now. We don't have internet and we don't have cell phone. People cannot communicate, cannot do anything. And the people now, the security was very tough with the protests. They fired tear gas and the sound bomb to stop them. And while there was a lot of people, they came from Bahri, they're trying to cross the bridge, and the army first, they were trying to fight them and stop them from cross the bridge and going to the presidential place. While the three people from three different directions from the Khartoum, they do the best and they reach to the presidential place. There is no internet connections, and there is no information about if there is any injuries or any people they got shot or killed, because no internet, no connection. We cannot have more information.
And Musab, how has the military as well as the Prime Minister's office reacted to the protests? And on the flip side, what are the protesters demanding?
Well, the protests now demanding, they don't want negotiation, they don't want any negotiation with the army, and they're rejecting the deal between the Prime Minister and the General Commander Al-Burhan. And today their demand was different than the previous protest. They're asking for a civil government. They don't want anything. And they still believe that the army hasn't got the right to be interfered in the politics. This is not her duty and this is not her business. And they said that we dream to have a good country and have a beautiful homeland, and we have a good future and prepare ourselves and moving forward. And the reaction from both of them, the Prime Minister and the General Commander, there is no rejection. There is no any press conference. There is no any declarations. Maybe we can wait until tomorrow. Maybe they're going to decide to do something about this in Khartoum.
All right, Musab, we will, of course, continue to keep an eye on developments there. Musab Mohsin Ibrahim joining us live from Khartoum. Moving on, authorities say jihadist attacks have killed at least 6 people in Niger. The attacks took place near the country's border with Burkina Faso. In a statement, the Interior Ministry said a policeman and 2 custom officers were among the dead. Civilians accounted for the remaining deaths. Niger is facing insurgent attacks from both ISWAP and Boko Haram. In an effort to combat this, authorities in Tillaberi announced petrol stations would close to cut fuel supply to jihadists. Mali's government has denied the presence of Russian mercenaries in its country. This is after 15 Western powers accused Russia of providing material support to a deployment of private military contractors. In a statement, government spokesman Abdoulaye Maiga said only Russian trainers are in the country as part of a bilateral agreement with Moscow. France, Canada, and 13 European nations on Thursday alleged that private military contractors from the Russia-backed Wagner Group were in Mali to help battle an Islamist insurgency. To West Africa now, East Africa rather, the Magistrates Court in Uganda has charged 15 individuals with terrorism-related charges. The defendants include 5 women and 10 men. They are blamed for a series of bombings that hit the country in October and November. CGTN's Michael Baleke has more.
6 people were confirmed dead and many more injured in the 4 separate explosions in Uganda. Police blame the attacks on a domestic terror group with links to the ADF rebels in the eastern DR Congo. The accused persons, all Ugandans, have been charged with aiding and abetting terrorism and belonging to a terrorist group. Investigations suggest that the suspects were found in possession of materials for making, placing, and detonating improvised explosive devices. The intention, according to police, was to cause death, serious bodily harm, and economic loss. The charge sheet also shows the 5 female suspects unlawfully provided accommodation and gave financial support to their male counterparts, well knowing that such support would be used to commit terrorism. The suspects have been remanded to prison until their next court appearance on January the 13th. Following the attacks, Uganda deployed its forces in the DR Congo. They have launched air and artillery strikes against ADF rebel positions. Michael Baleke, CGTN, Kampala, Uganda.
Crossing the border now, Kenya is set to start offering booster shots to individuals 6 months after they received their initial shots. The country's Ministry of Health says people who have been fully vaccinated can receive the same vaccine or a different one for an additional dose. CGTN's Wilkista Nyabwa has more insights on this developing story.
Kenya's decision to offer booster shots comes at a time when the country continues to register more COVID-19 cases. On Christmas Eve, Kenya registered nearly 33% of positive COVID-19 tests from slightly over 9,000 people tested, its highest rate of positive COVID-19 tests yet. The country's COVID-19 vaccine numbers, however, still remain fairly low. By 24th December, Kenya had administered about 9.5 million vaccines. Just 14.4% of adults in the country are fully vaccinated. In early December, the country confirmed the presence of the Omicron coronavirus variant, and with the emergence of the Omicron variant, the country is looking to ramp up its vaccination rates. The Ministry of Health announced that it would demand proof of vaccination to access public spaces such as hotels, restaurants and airports from 21st December. Now it is turning to the booster shots to help tackle the disease. Kenya uses the AstraZeneca, Sinopharm, Moderna, Pfizer and Johnson & Johnson vaccines. Adults who have been fully vaccinated will be offered the same or different vaccine for an additional dose. The Pfizer COVID vaccine will also be offered to children aged 15 and above. The country has set a target of vaccinating at least 30 million people by December 2022. Wilkista Nyabwa, CGTN in Nairobi, Kenya.
Now, despite the surge in coronavirus cases around the world, South Africa is open for the holidays. Officials say a midnight curfew is still in effect, but for now, Christmas celebrations are on. Our correspondent Angelo Coppola reports from Johannesburg.
At the moment, it can best be described as virus fatigue in many quarters. The mild symptoms are also making people feel that this particular battle in the war is over. The fact that the authorities didn't impose stricter lockdown measures means that we went into the third surge due to the Omicron virus quite complacently for most people. A couple of weeks ago, the virus surge came to start and then ended. People are being told, in fact, to avoid indoor events and to practice that non-medical interventions like wearing masks, social distancing, and of course washing their hands. But people aren't adhering to any of those now. People are wearing masks around their chins. You can see I'm not wearing a mask, but I'm outdoors at the moment, so it's not too bad. But the issue really is that the health minister has warned the public that they have to be careful. He's watching the data and has promised to act swiftly if there's any kind of a spike. And we are starting to see a spike in the coastal regions of Western Cape and KwaZulu-Natal, with KwaZulu-Natal leading at the moment.
In the Philippines, more than 3 million people have been directly affected by Typhoon Rai. The strongest storm to hit the country this year made landfall last week. It has killed close to 400 people, and many of the survivors are struggling to rebuild their lives. Gretchen Malalad has more.
It's been almost a week since the typhoon struck, but thousands of families are still struggling from the aftermath of the typhoon. I'm here in the island of Bohol, where thousands of families have been badly affected. Here in the town of Lobok, rows of houses have been destroyed by raging floods as the nearby river overflowed during the height of Super Typhoon Rai. The roofs of houses have been blown off, their walls and ceilings also gave way, and all of their possessions have been swept away by floods and are now full of mud. Today is Christmas Day, but you can't feel any Christmas spirit here. There's no celebration, no Christmas meal, no opening of gifts. The floods have taken every possession the residents had. They are left with nothing. Survivors are desperate for food and water. They say that relief efforts are slow. They were handed out a few food packs, but it only lasted for 2 days. There's no potable drinking water, electricity and communication lines are still down. Bohol is one of the hardest hit islands, and it has the highest death toll among the provinces that were struck by Super Typhoon Rai. Out of the more than 300 deaths, the province alone recorded 96 fatalities. Their families are still mourning the loss of their loved ones. The typhoon brought raging floods which reached roofs of houses. Violent winds uprooted trees and torn down even the sturdiest of structures. The province is a popular tourist destination. It's hard to picture its beauty now because of the destruction, but Bohol is well known for its dive spots, rolling hills, and tarsier primates. And most of the jobs here are reliant on the tourism industry. But because of the pandemic, thousands were already jobless even before the typhoon struck. So this disaster came at a time when many are already living below the poverty line.
All of us are having a hard time financially since the pandemic began. Then the typhoon hit. But thanks to the Lord's grace, we're still alive. Now we're just worried about how we're going to recover from this.
The height of the water rose so fast. We were scared because we were on the second floor. Thought it would go higher than our house. We had absolutely nowhere to go.
But even if the people here are left with nothing, no material possessions, money, and food, they still have hope that little by little they will be able to recover. All they wish for this Christmas Day is a little help. They need food, potable water, and some construction materials so that they can rebuild their homes and as well as their lives. Gretchen Malalad, CGTN, Bohol Province.
Meanwhile, NASA's James Webb Space Telescope blasted off just around about 2 hours ago from the EU Space Agency's launch base in French Guiana. The revolutionary $9 billion infrared telescope is about 100 times more sensitive than its predecessor, Hubble. It will be able to observe objects at greater distances and thus farther back in time. Astronomers say it will bring into view a glimpse of the cosmos never previously seen, dating to just 100 million years after the Big Bang. Its instruments make it ideal to search for evidence of potentially life-supporting atmospheres. Over the coming month, the Webb telescope will coast to its destination in solar orbit roughly 1 million miles from Earth. The crew on board the China space station are preparing for their second spacewalk since they arrived in October. They are expected to carry out the operation on Sunday. The three-member crew that includes China's first female astronaut, who is in space for a second time, they carried out their first spacewalk last month. And 2 weeks ago, they gave a science lesson from the space station to Chinese students. Well, it's time for us to take a short break. Here's what's coming up when we return. Nigerians join Christmas celebrations while observing safety protocols. And a Zimbabwean scientist reimagines traditional ice cream using uniquely Southern African flavors.
So this is it. I'm just about to be shot.
The tents here, bottles are being thrown as they do so.
There are about 3 critical bridges here in Malawi. That's one of them. We're going to cross that bridge.
As you can see behind me, police forces
who are replying with gas. Gas just came in.
Tear gas, so it's all begun now.
Divisions leading the charge into West Mosul have brought us here.
Just got to be careful here with some gunshots.
This is where most of the fighting has been concentrated.
This is the front line now after 9 days of fighting.
We're about 2 to 3 kilometers from
the front line. Within clear view of this front line position.
Welcome back. Now, Christian faithful in Nigeria are joining their counterparts all over the world to mark the Christmas celebrations. The season is usually marked by religious, social and family gatherings, but like in 2020, this year requires compliance to COVID-19 safety protocols, especially as the Omicron variant of the coronavirus continues to raise global concerns. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam has that report.
The mood is set for Christmas in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. From the glimmering Christmas decors to the musical renditions of hymns and carols. But behind the glitz and glam is the significance of the celebration.
There's something that comes with the season that speaks of celebration, that speaks of sharing, of giving and of love. But more significantly and more spiritually is the fact that this represents the season that God gave his greatest gift, his son Jesus Christ, to be the savior of mankind from sin.
This is the second year in a row Nigeria is celebrating Christmas amid the coronavirus pandemic. Its fourth wave has got health authorities calling for strict restrictions and adherence to safety protocols.
Going out, we should we'll always be cautious of the places we go. If we are going to amusement parks, we'll try as much as possible to avoid where there are overcrowding. So for me, that's just basically what we intend to do with my family.
I hope to have fun, take my kids out, take my family out, hang out with friends, hang out with family. You know, last year with the COVID coming in, we had to be locked down. We didn't have to have the opportunity to celebrate with family, with friends and all of that. For the fact that we have to celebrate this year doesn't mean that we have to be carefree.
Religious organizations too are championing the adherence to safety measures.
As a church, especially with this fourth wave, we've been stricter. We're stricter in the announcement, up to like pointing a few people out who did not wear their masks. So where we've noticed a little slack in people's attitude towards that, we've trumped up our insistence on people wearing the mask.
Despite all odds, many will stop at nothing to take advantage of the season, showing love and making merry. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
Now, a Zimbabwe-born scientist is reimagining traditional ice cream by using flavors only found in southern Africa. Tapiwa Guza, a local restaurateur, has added a little twist to the frozen treat which may keep you guessing about where it comes from. Each flavor tells a story of an African country. Here is that story with CGTN's Julie Shire.
A multitude of ice cream flavors greet you at Tapiwa Guza's ice cream shop in Cape Town. Every scoop, a burst of indigenous African tastes and aromas, including baobab, edible clay, and bitter leaf.
Food was a big part of my childhood, and
consuming fruits from the garden, veg from the garden, grains from the garden is a very normal part of my life. So that's why I'm so heavily focused on African ingredients and African dishes. I happen to be using ice cream to tell these stories. That Namibian person who's never seen that flavor in that way, that's who's important. Or that Angolan, whoever, you know.
The Zimbabwean-born microbiologist has been experimenting with the frozen treats for the last 12 years. Perfecting it does, however, take time.
In the last 4 years, I've made about 650 to 700 different flavors now. It's always rising because each week I make 7 new flavors. And the reason that number is so high is not because those flavors are always available here. In fact, I don't repeat my flavors. Make a flavor once off, it sells out, we move on to the next person, to the next culture, to the next country, to the next ingredient.
Tapiwa's taste adventure has so far delighted most of his patrons.
I'm having a ginger and clay ice cream. Yeah, it's really good. It's really good. It tastes like clay, but it also tastes like ginger. I don't know. It's just like, it tastes like what it is. And it's really enjoyable. It's an interesting flavor.
It tastes really good. I've never actually had ice cream like this. And the flavors that he had were very interesting. Like, I've never ever come across flavors like that. So yeah, it's exciting to try something new.
Guzha has plans to add snow cones to his menu, also made from ingredients found on the continent. So if you live in Cape Town or are popping in for a visit, one thing's for sure, these delicious treats are definitely worth a try. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Well, it's time for us to take another short break. Here's what's coming up in